All right, Shabbos, good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking our sponsors for this morning's shir. To thank our TALMUD Torah sponsors for the month of Cheshvan. Steve and Teri Czinn, in loving memory of Steve's father, Bunim Tzvi ben Chaim. Leah Sol, as the zechus refuah sheleimah for her daughter, Ilana bas Esther, and the zechus refuah sheleimah for all of those wounded in Eretz Yisroel. Yonason and Wolff for a complete and lasting refuah sheleimah for Refuel Yitzchak Baruch ben Esther. Jerry and Sora Wolasky and the zechus refuah sheleimah for Zecharya Dov ben Perel Shira. Azriel and Iris Miller and the zechus of the holy soldiers of the IDF, and in the merit of our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisroel. Our week of learning sponsors, Robert Emas in honor of the Yahrzeit of his mother, Rus Bas Sora, and an appreciation for the entire Daf Yomi shiur, and an anonymous sponsor in honor of Yoni Frager's birthday. Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov. We're saying the zechus of our learning. All of the Neshama Shav and Aliyah, the families in Nechama, those who need a refuah should have one together with Kol Cholei Yisrael. Our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisroel should be safe and secure. Our soldiers should be successful. And Yoni should have a happy birthday. All right, so I'll say with that, let us begin. A lot to do today, really like a very packed day and a packed Gemara, beautiful Gemara. So we are beginning, today's daf is Ayin Aleph, 71, and we are picking up 21 lines up from the bottom on 70b. But they're short lines. They're not. But okay, Machar is Rabbi Yehuda Pomdis. So remember again, we left off at the end of the story of Rabbi Yehuda Bar Yecheskel, who had gone ahead and dealt with a particular man who turned out to be an Eved. Then the people of Nardo were ready to go ahead and attack him. And pretty much what he said is, guys, here's the deal. Be quiet, and I won't tell you what I have on the families of Narda, and we'll just keep it like that. Or start up with me, and you'll find that you are genealogically disqualified. So the Gemara goes to this. Gemara says, Machlos Rabbi Yehuda ben Pompadisa. Rabbi Yehuda made the following announcement in Pompadisa. Ada the Yonason of the families of Avda and Yonason. So Rasha has the discussion, are these individuals or are these families? So Avda and Yonason, they're Avadim. Yehuda bar Papa Mamzera. Yehuda bar Papa is a Mamzer. Bati bar Tovia Baramas Ruchal Shachal Gita de Cherusa. This guy Bati bar Tovia, because he was arrogant. Now, interesting enough, he was an Eved Kinani, but he was arrogant, and therefore he refused to accept a get shiur. Okay, Machriz Rabbi Mechuza. So Rabbi made the following announcements in Mechuza: Beloi Danoi Taloi Maloi Zanoi Kulam Lifsol. Sorry, all of these families are puzzle. And I will say, you're going to see why the Gemara is including this in just a little bit. All of these families are genealogically blemished. Amar Rav Yehuda, Govai Givoni. The Govai family, they're Givonim. Darnunisa Darai Nisinoi. So the Darnunisa family, they're actually Nisimim. Amar Rav Yosef, Hai Beikuvi de Pompadisa, this city of Beikuvi and Pompadisa, Kulam Da'avdi. They're all Avadim. Amar Yehuda Shmuel, Arba Meos Avadim. Arbas Alafim Hayulo the Pashchor ben Emar. So this is what Rabbi Yehuda said. The name is Shmuel. 400 Avadim. Others say 4,000 Avadim were owned by this guy Pashchor ben Emar. V'kulam nitmu bekahuna. And I will say, this individual Pashchor ben Emar, because he was very powerful and very wealthy, his Avadim were able to marry into prominent families, including Kohanim. Now, I will say, now listen to this. So how do you know the Kohanic families that were infiltrated by Avadim? How do you know that? Listen to this. Any Kohen who is especially brazen and filled with chutzpah probably is a member of one of those families. Amar Abaye, and all of them live in a row in Narda. And I will say, this idea argues in Rabbi Lazar. Why? Rabbi Lazar, if you see a Kohen who is very brazen and arrogant, do not think that he is genealogically blemished. Ne'emar v'amich kimerive Kohen. We'll say the pasuk over here. The pasuk in Hosea says the Navi compares Klal Yisrael. Your nation is like a quarrelsome Kohen. So we've seen this before. Kohanim have a certain quarrelsome nature to them, right? A certain hot-headed nature. Now, understand what that is, right? You remember Maseches Gittin, but say, remember again, Chazal had to institute a totally different get for Kohanim. Remember again, the get Mekusher, the folded get like the accordion that needed signatures on each fold. Who was that made for? That was made for Kohanim. Kohanim would lose their cool, say to their wife, we're getting divorced, right? Over nothing. To kind of like pump the brakes on the process a little bit, they made this prolonged get process for the Kohanim. So I will say, it's interesting, anger and even sometimes arrogance, right? Brazenness, azos meitzach. I will say, often these could be misappropriations of the trait of passion. Right? Kohanim are known for their passion from the beginning, right? From the time, ultimately, again, that Shevet Levi stood up when Moshe Rabbeinu said, Mi la Hashem Elai, in the aftermath of the building of the golden calf, they demonstrated a passionate connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So when you have, right, mischanneled passion, what does that result in? It results in anger. It can result in a shtickle arrogance and a little bit of brazenness. So therefore, there's a shaila is if you see a Kohen acting in this way, does that represent a genealogical flaw? Or maybe, no, it's just like, that's Kohanim for you. In other words, that there's just a little bit of a misappropriation of this powerful trait, which in general is a very preferable. The Rebbe says that in reality, what happens in life is this koach. And the only shaila is which way you choose to direct that koach. There's energy that Hakadosh Baruch Hu gives us, and everyone gets the same energy. The question just is how you choose to channel that energy. It's incredible. What says, going back to what we saw yesterday, anyone who marries a woman who's not fit for him, right? The woman who's not genealogically fit for him, Hakadosh Baruch Hu masha shchinaso, when Hakadosh Baruch Hu rests his shchina, may al kol hashvatim on the tribes, eino meid alov. The Hakadosh Baruch Hu doesn't rest his shchina on this particular individual. Shne'emar, shiftei ka eidos li Yisrael. A masay have eidos li Yisrael. Ultimately, again, when is a Jew part, so to speak, of a testimony of Klal Yisrael? Bizman shashvatim shiftei ka. In other words, only when you have a union that's part of shiftei ka, that's part of the shvatim of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. At the end of it, and when do you have a union that's part of the shvatim of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Only when you married an appropriate woman. I'm Rabbi Chaim Rabbi Chanina. K'shakadosh Baruch Hu masha shchinaso in masha ela mishpachas miyuchaso shebi Yisrael. When Hakadosh Baruch Hu rests his shchina, he only rests it on genealogically fit families in Klal Yisrael. Shne'emar ba'isahinu Hashem eya Elokim l'chol mishpachos Yisrael. In that time, Hakadosh Baruch Hu says, "I will be a God for all the families of Israel." L'chol Yisrael lo ne'emar ela l'chol mishpachos yihu lilav. Also, very interesting. Hakadosh Baruch Hu doesn't say, I'll rest my shechina on all of Klal Yisrael. Rather, what does he say? I'll rest my shechina on the mishpachos of Klal Yisrael. What does it mean, the mishpachos? What does it mean, ultimately, again, the families? Right? The families ultimately means those who have intact genealogical families, ultimately, again, will have the shechina rest. I will say, again, I just want to point out, you could look at these Gemaras, you can say, it's the Gemara being elitist. It's not elitist. The intact family unit is the core necessity for the continuity of Klal Yisrael. If there's no, you see this, right? Right now, this is not an argument within Eretz Yisrael, because Baruch Hashem, everyone is, the only positive piece of war is that there's an incredible achdus. But one of the major issues that comes up in Eretz Yisrael from time to time are the issues of gerus. Who controls conversion? Now, often the way the different sides are represented, it doesn't do much to allow for mutual understanding. But just understand, when you see the chief rabbinate wanting to maintain a quote-unquote monopoly on conversion, so we'll say that's not a power play. It's not, for some it might be a power play, but it's not a power play. Right? Who controls conversion and who controls genealogy, I will say, this is what controls the future of Klal Yisrael. If there's a corruption in the genealogy, if there's a corruption in conversions, we'll say everything falls apart. So when you see HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying that the Shekhinah rests upon genealogically pure families, that's not an elitist statement. It's an existential statement. Klal Yisrael can only continue to exist if there is genealogical purity within the right zechus. Otherwise, we just simply dissipate. We just disappear like every other nation that doesn't maintain a sense of genealogical intactness. That must become to an incredible Gemara. Amra Barafuna, Zumayli Yesh Ben Yisrael Gerim. This is the Maila that will call Jews from birth may have over converts. The Ilu Bi Yisrael Ksivbahu, Vayisi Lohem Lelokim. Like Klal Yisrael says, I will be to them a God. Vehema Yuliam, and they will be to me a nation. V'Ilu Begerim Ksiv, Mihu Ze Arev Eslibo Lagesh Eselai Nu'um Hashem, Vayisem Li La'am, Va'anuchi Eyeh Lochem Lelokim. So Rabbi say this is interesting. The Gemara points out over here that when it comes to what we'll call Jews from birth, HaKadosh Baruch Hu frames it as, I'll be a God to you, and you'll be a nation to me. As if to say, the relationship that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has with us is unconditional. In other words, you don't have to pledge yourself to me in order for me to pledge myself to you. I'm yours. By converts, the pasuk says, if you pledge yourself to me, then ultimately, again, I'll pledge myself to you. It seems to be conditional. So the Gemara wants to put this as a maila, as a level that, let's say, the Jew from birth has over the ger. It's interesting, I will say, the Rishonim bring out on this Gemara that it's not true. It's not a maila. In other words, it's a simple reality, right? It's a simple reality. The Jew from birth, who didn't make the choice, Jewish from birth, so I'm entered into this relationship. So because I'm entered into this relationship, Baruch Hu says, I'm yours. I'm yours, right? In other words, I don't have to pledge myself to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I was pledged. I was born into this. So because I was born into this, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, okay, you're already in it, therefore I belong to you. The ger, in order for the ger to become a ger, what does he have to do? Right? What does she have to do? They have to make the most overwhelming and incredible commitment in the entire universe, which is a willingness to enter into Klal Yisrael. So therefore, again, the Rishonim bring down, that's the pshat in the Gemara. The ger has to first say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm yours. Just procedurally, that's the way it works. I'm yours. And then once the ger makes that overwhelming commitment to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Ribbon Shalom makes the reciprocal commitment, ultimately again to the ger. So the Rishonim point out, Lav Dafka, that right, it's not really the Gemara saying that the Jew from birth has a higher level than the ger. It's a different dynamic. The Jew from birth is already pledged, therefore there is no need for him to pledge himself. He's already pledged. Chadosh Baruch Hu says, I pledge myself to you. The ger, to enter, has to make that pledge to God. But once he makes that pledge to God, he is privileged to receive the reciprocal pledge from God. You gave yourself to me, I'll give myself to you. Now once we're on the topic of gerim, of converts, the Gemara, both that wild Gemara over here. Amar Rabbi Chalbo, Kashim gerim li Yisrael kisapachas. Listen to this Gemara. Gerim, converts are as difficult for the Jewish people as a sapachas. Rabbi say, what's a sapachas? Sapachas is saras. Leprosy, well, we translated it as leprosy, but saras, shenemar. Rabbi say, what does this mean? Shenemar, v'nilva hager aleim, v'nismechu al beis Yaakov. So Rabbi say, the pasuk says literally, the ger will accompany you. V'nispechu al beis Yaakov literally means they will attach themselves or they will accompany beis Yaakov. So the Gemara says, ksiv hacha v'nispechu ksiv hasam laseis v'lasapachas. So I will say, so the Torah uses, so the Psukim use the same notion of sapachas. V'nispechu and sapachas. Sapachas is saras. So I'll say, so what does that mean? Right? The gerim are difficult for Klal Yisrael kisapachas. So Rabbi say this is a dramatic machlokes Rashi and Tosfos. So Rashi says over here, kashim gerim she'inim zehirim b'mitzvos. Sometimes the ger is not careful with mitzvos. V'aregilim etzlam nimshachim etzlam v'lom l'masem. Rabbi say, unfortunately, one of the most difficult things when it comes to gerus is ultimately doing it the correct way. And therefore, again, the unfortunate reality is many people do convert, and again, they either convert without purity of intent, or not for the right reasons, or within a mechanism that doesn't know how to really bring them within the fold of Judaism, and as such, their Judaic commitment is often fundamentally lacking. And because it's lacking, they're Jewish in name, but often not in practice. So according to Rashi, that's the dynamic that the Gemara is highlighting over here. So that's what it means, Kashim Gerun Yisrael. Sometimes the ger comes in, doesn't know what to do, doesn't know how to do it, and unfortunately could become a liability for Klal Yisrael. Tosfos says something amazing. Tosfos gives 4 different answers, which we're not going to get into now. I just want to share with you 2 of them. One of them, Tosfos says, "The kashem gerim liyisod kisapachas." I'm going to quote you from Tosfos. "Lefi shehisya Kadosh Baruch Hu aleim b'chav dalid makomos shelo lahonos osam v'efshar shelo yitzarem." Rabbi say, listen to this. Tosfos says, do you know why gerim are difficult for Klal Yisrael? Because there is a heightened sensitivity that every Jew has to have towards the convert. And Tosfos says, we almost never live up to the expectation of the way we are supposed to treat the ger. It's hard enough to go ahead and live up to v'ahavta l'recha kamocha. For the ger, in addition to v'ahavta l'recha kamocha, there's also an additional mitzvah of v'ahavta mesager. 24 places in the Torah. Tosfos says, the Torah highlights the need to treat the ger with additional level of sensitivity. Tosfos says the unfortunate reality is, we don't. So that's what it means. Kashem gerim liyisrael, Tosfos says, means that, so to speak, it's a liability because we have this heightened sensitivity, and it's so difficult to live up to that. The other possibility, Tosfos says, this actually appears in Amud Aleph. Tosfos says, "Varab Avram ger." Listen to this. Tosfos quotes Rabbi Avram ger. All right. Shpiresh lefi shagerim bikiyim b'mitzvos umedaktikin bahem kashem heim liyisod kisapachas. Rabbi Avram Ger says, no, I'll tell you the pshat. You know what it means that Kashmir Yisrael Kisapachas? It means Gerim are so much better than those of us who are born into this, that they become, so to speak, a liability or an indictment for the rest of Klal Yisrael. And by the way, nice in B'chol Yom, we see this. Sometimes you see again the passion that the ger brings to his Yiddishkeit, the commitment that he brings to his Yiddishkeit, the Slavos. And it's like, I don't know, I'm tired. They're doing this and it's all exact. And again, it's an indictment for Klal Yisrael. So I just want to point out, Tosfos brings a number of other reasons as well. But again, just to highlight therefore 3 reasons. According to Rashi understands, no, it's actually talking about the compromised state of the ger, that often the ger is not medaktek in mitzvahs. He's not careful with mitzvahs. As a result, other people learn from his behaviors, and he brings down others. I will tell you, as having seen this in situations where people are not brought through the conversion process in the right way. They're either not ready for it, they go through a basin or a mechanism that doesn't really know what they're doing, and the conversion absolutely becomes a liability for them, and for all those around them. There's no kasha. Rashi's always right. But right, you could see this. That's Rashi. Tosfos, either possibility is kasha gerim liyisrael. They're difficult for us because we, the community of born Jews, so to speak, have a heightened sense of sensitivity and responsibility to the ger. We don't live up to that, and as such it becomes a liability for us. Or third possibility, Rabbi Avram Ger, who says that at the end of the day, no, gerim are excellent. And often they're so good in their Yiddishkeit that it becomes an indictment for the rest of us. Incredible. Let's go weiter. Says the Gemara. Says Rabbi Chaim Rabbi Chanina. K'shel Baruch Hu, both side top of Ayin Aleph. K'shel Kadosh Baruch Hu mitaher shvatim shivto shalevi mitaher tchila. This is beautiful. Now let's say in the future when Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to mitaher shvatim. Now let's say we're going to see this is part of an interesting discussion. Up until now, we've been focused on this idea that HaKadosh Baruch Hu only rests His Shechina on families which are genealogically pure, right? And then you had all of these other Rabbi Yehuda Bar Yecheskel, all these other people outing, so to speak, these genealogically impure families. So I will say we're going to see that one of the things that Eliyahu potentially is going to do when Mashiach comes, is straighten out genealogical lines. Now, specifically, the shevet that needs to really be straightened out is Levi, right? Because remember, shevet Levi is Leviim and Kohanim, and that's 2 things. That's identify people who think they are Leviim and Kohanim, but are not. But also, there's a whole other swath of the Jewish population, which is who don't know they are Leviim and Kohanim, but are. So the Gemara says the first tribe that is going to be genealogically straightened out in times of Mashiach is shevet Levi. So the Gemara says, "Mitar shato shalevi mitar tchilo shneimar v'yashav mitzrayim mitar kesef v'tir es bnei Levi v'zikek osam kizav v'kesef Vayu la'Hashem magishe mincha bitzdaka. Okay. Rabbi Shmuel Levi, kesef mitar mamzerim. That's an interesting statement over here. Rabbi Levi says, money has the ability to purify mamzerim. Now, how does that work? See, some things don't change. Money can fix a lot of problems, right? Apparently, including mamzerus. Rabbi said, take a look at Rashi. Kesef mitar mamzerim, hamituam b'Yisrael machmas mamonam v'hu goreim lahem sheitaru shela asid lavo. Let's listen to this. People who have money have influence. People who have influence could accomplish a lot of things, including having their families marry into other families, even though there are genealogical impurities. So money gets people to overlook other things. Now, the interesting part is we're going to see the concept that here's the tension. Do we look for genealogical impurities? Or do we just let it lie? Let it lie. So that's going to be the tension. So on Amud Beis, we saw a lot of examples of outing genealogical issues. Here, Rabbi Shmuel Silber is going to pick up a motif of, if you don't know there's a problem, don't make a problem. What about generations ago? Sometimes Rabbi said we just let things be. Now, when Eliyahu Hanavi comes, perhaps, again, clearly when it comes to Shevet Levi, and I will say it makes sense, you have to do it by Shevet. You have to straighten out Shevet Levi. Why do you have to straighten out Shevet Levi? Why? Avoda. In other words, you can't have non-Kohanim and non-Leviim practicing in the basement. So Shevet Levi absolutely has to be straightened out. The rest of us, okay, we'll see. We'll see what has to happen. So it says, the Gemara goes right there. So Kesef says, Shneimar, v'yashav mitzarifu metar kesef. Ma magishe mincha b'tzedaka. What does it mean they bring the mincha b'tzedaka? Am Rabbi Yitzchak, tzedaka asak HaKadosh Baruch Hu, tzedaka asak HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael. We'll say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu performed the great act of tzedaka with us. What's the great act of tzedaka? Shemishpecha shenitma'a nitma'a. Now we'll say this becomes the operative phrase over here. This is nitma'a, not with an aleph of impure, but nitma'a again with an ayin, which means what? To become absorbed or hidden. So this is going to become the dominant light over here in this Gemara, which is that halacha l'maisa, mishpacha shnitma'a means, we'll say we don't run to look to discover genealogical impurities, right? But rather, again, we assume if it looks okay, it is okay. Now I just want to be clear. This comes up all the time in marriages. You can't bury your head in the sand, right? If you have a family, and for example, there were conversions, or you have a family, and there were divorces, right? So those things absolutely require significant investigation, right? Because remember, again, then you could really have an issue of either by gittin, by divorces, you could have an issue of mamzerus, chas v'shalom, or again by conversions, you could have an issue of Jewish legitimacy or not. So those things are, especially in the context of marriage, those things are of absolute importance to investigate. But stam, I will say again, stam, so a person says, okay, no conversions in the family, or no divorces in the family, okay. Again, we don't have to look for a genealogical person. Once you see this tension, right? Clearly, again, you see like Rabbi Yehuda Bar Cheskel and Rava and others, again, are outing. They feel there is a need to absolutely proactively maintain genealogical purity. Here, the Gemara seems to take the approach, if you don't know there's a problem, don't make a problem. Incredible. So, Gufar Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Kalaratzos Isa Eretz Yisroel. Both say all lands are considered to be like dough compared to Eretz Yisroel. Eretz Yisroel Isa LaBavel. And Eretz Yisroel is considered to be dough for Bavel. Now both say, now what does this mean? This example of all the lands are considered to be like dough. Both say dough is made up of, Rashi brings down over here, is made up of multiple ingredients. A mixture. So when we say that the lands are like dough, it means that the other lands have mixtures of people who are genealogically fit and those who are not genealogically fit, as opposed to Eretz Yisroel, which has a higher level of genealogical purity. But Eretz Yisroel is considered to be like dough when compared to Bavel, meaning Bavel has the highest level of genealogical purity. And I was saying, now we know why is that? Ezra. Because remember, Ezra separated out everyone who had genealogical issues and brought them with him to Eretz Yisroel. So whereas Eretz Yisroel is considered to be genealogically superior to the rest of the lands, Bavel is superior to Eretz Yisrael. I will say it hurts to say those words. Nothing is superior to Eretz Yisrael, right? But okay, but at least in this one inyan, Bavel may have superiority. So we made Rebbe. So let's listen to this. In the days of Rebbe, Bikshu Lasos Bavel Isal Eretz Yisrael. In the days of Rebbe, they wanted to switch the status quo, and they wanted to say that actually Eretz Yisrael was superior to Bavel. Amar Lahem, Rebbe said, "Kotzim atem asilni be'enai." You're putting thorns in my eyes. So you know what? I'll leave Rabbi Chanina Bar Chama on this. Say first wide line. Nitbal iman Rabbi Chanina Bar Chama. Rabbi Chanina Bar Chama got involved. Over lahem. Kach mikublanim mi Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi shnera mishum aviv. Kal aratzos isa li'eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael isa bebavel. So Rabbi Chanina Bar Chama says, don't mess with the status quo. The status quo we have is, whereas Eretz Yisrael is genealogically superior to all the other lands, Bavel is superior to Eretz Yisrael. Bimei Rabbi Pinchas, Bikshu Lasos Bavel Isal Eretz Yisrael. Once again, about the days of Rabbi Pinchas, once they say, you see this push, because there was a certain point in time where again you had greater rabbinic presence in Eretz Yisrael, so they wanted to switch the status quo. They wanted to say Eretz Yisrael is the most genealogically superior over Bavel. So the days of Rabbi Pinchas wanted to do the same thing. They wanted to make Bavel genealogically inferior to Eretz Yisrael. Amr lahem la'avadav. So let's listen to this. So Rabbi Pinchas. So they came to Rabbi Pinchas. It's Rabbi Pinchas. It's time to switch the status quo. Eretz Yisrael is going to be genealogically superior to Bavel. Okay, so let's listen to this. Amr la'avadav. So Rabbi Pinchas said to his servants, Kishani omer shnei devarim beis hamedrash. Listen, I'm going to go to give shiur in the beis medrash. After I say two things, taluni ba'arisa. Literally, again, put me in the bed, right? Put me on the stretcher, right? Verotzu, and get me out of the beis medrash. Get out of the beis medrash, right? So I'll say, in other words, he was about to say something. Okay. Ki ayo. So when he comes into the beis medrash, I'll say, he comes into the beis medrash. What does he say? Number one, Amar lahem, ein shchita la'of min TORAH. First thing he said to them was, there is no biblical obligation of shchita for a bird. Now, both say this happens. Rashi points out over here. This is a machlokes in Meseches Chulin. Does a bird require shechita or not? Now, both say that he began with. Now we don't pass this way. A bird requires shechita, right? But ultimately, he began with the statement. Why? Because this was something that people weren't familiar with, and he knew, as they say, would create a hack. Right? It would create a conversation in the beis medrash. Everyone would get busy with the conversation, and then as they were busy with that, he said. And then he said, as everyone was busy with that first halacha, Amar lahu, kalaratzos isal Eretz Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael isal Bavel. And then I will say, he once again affirmed, all the lands are dough to Eretz Yisrael, but Eretz Yisrael is inferior to Bavel when it comes to genealogy. And I will say, remember again, there was a push to switch that. Right after he said that, Natlu Barisa, his servants put him on the stretcher, Veratzu, they ran him out, Ratzu Acharov, everyone from the beis medrash began to run after him, right? Velo Higiu, but apparently, again, Rabbi Pinchas had some pretty fast servants, and they did not go ahead and catch up with him. Yashvu Ubatku Ad Shigila Sakana. So let's listen to this. So the students in the beis medrash decided that if Rabbi Pinchas is not going to do it, we're going to do this. And they decided to do an exhaustive genealogical search, investigation, right, into the families of Eretz Yisrael. And they began to do that, right, ad she'egiu l'sakana, until they discovered some pretty damaging genealogical information about some pretty powerful families, upirshu. They say, you know what? Let's go back and talk about the bird. Right? Let's go back and talk about shechita by the bird. In other words, so the point over here is, and I will say, it's so fascinating because you begin to see this motif over and over, which is, the reality is, if you do enough investigation about anyone, chances are you'll probably find something. I would say, it's such a musar. The same way genealogically, if you investigate enough, maybe you'll find a lot of things about a lot of people. You know, it's a good musar. You look into anyone enough, right? You examine anyone enough. So delve into anyone's life enough, you're going to find something that's not great. That's just the nature of people in any event. But in Eretz Yisrael, they just decided to leave the status quo alone. So Gemara says, Tana, O dacharis haisa, v'lo ratzu chacham legalosa. Did I skip here? Oh, sorry. I'm Rabbi Yochanan. So Gemara says, Heichla b'yadeinu. Eichala bi'adenu. So I will say, so this is lashon of a shvuah. I swear by the Beis Hamikdash, right? Eichala bi'adenu. Aval ma'asa shari gidolei hador nitmu uba. So I will say, ultimately, I swear by the Beis Hamikdash that it is in our hands to go ahead and to reveal the genealogical impurities of the families in Eretz Yisroel. But ultimately, again, let's leave it alone, right? Shari gidolei hador nitmu uba. Again, better to just leave it alone. So I'll say even Gedoli Hadar, ultimately again, some of them have families with genealogical impurities, and therefore better to just leave it alone. So we keep seeing this same phrase over and over. This becomes the guiding light. And I will say, this is the tension. This constant mishpacha shnitma nitma. Sometimes, let it lie. Let it lie. You don't know that there's a problem. Do not make a problem. Amar Abaye. Af anan nami tanina. We also learn this. Mishpachas beis hatzrifa haisa be'ever hayarden. There was this Mishpachas beis hatzrifa, that was their name, who lived on the other side of the Jordan. Berichaka ben Sion bizroa. And Ben Sion was Ben Sion. Ben Sion was, Rashi says, an Adam Chashuv, a very important guy and very powerful guy. So this guy Ben Sion would not marry into the beis hatzrifa family. He distanced them. Obviously, by doing that, what he seemed to indicate was what? That they had some type of genealogical issue. Oda Cheres Haisa, there was another family, the Kirva Ben Sion. And Ben Sion brought them close. And the irony was, the other family that Ben Sion brought close actually had legitimate genealogical issues. So he distanced the genealogically pure family, brought close the genealogically impure family. But the problem is, because Ben Sion did what he did, it cast aspersions on this family, on this beis hatzrifa family. Kigon elu elio ba l'tamei l'tar l'rachei kol l'karev. So we'll say these are examples of when Eliana becomes, he's going to fix these things. In other words, families who are wrongly thought of as genealogically impure, those he will go ahead and rectify. Aval mishpacha shenitma nitma. But a family, again, that no one knows of any genealogical impurities, even if they did have genealogical impurities, we'll just let it lie. I will say this is now an alternate version. And this alternate version is families who are wrongfully known as genealogically unfit, Eliyahu Navi will restore them to a fit status. But families who have genealogical issues, but no one knows about them, we're probably just going to leave those alone, allow them to disappear into the sands of time. Tana, Oda Cheres Haisa, Veloratzchum Legalosa. I will say there was another family ultimately again that had genealogical impurities. The Chacham didn't want to reveal it. So I will say this is interesting. When the Chacham did have issues of genealogy, although they would not reveal it, because they're operating with this concept of mishpacha shenitma nitma, the Chachamim would reveal this to the students. It was important for someone to have some accurate genealogical record. So they would hand it over once every 7 years. Others say twice every 7 years. Right? It seems to be the opinion aligns with the one who said once every 7 years. Hareini Nazir imlo egala mishpachos. So let's listen to this. What happens if a person says, Reuben says, I hereby declare I will become a Nazir if I don't reveal the genealogical impurities in a certain family? What's the halacha? Yeah, Nazir. Better to become a Nazir, velo yigala mishpachos. Incredible, I will say. So this becomes again part of the idea of mishpacha shnitma nitma. We don't look for genealogical issues, but once again a family kind of becomes cloaked and no one knows about it, we leave it alone. Amar Bar Amar Yochanan, Shem ben Arba Osios. The both say the name of Hashem, which is comprised of 4 letters. That's Yud, Hey, and then Vav and Hey. Ultimately, and the Chacham convey knowledge of this name, how to pronounce it, when to use it. Ultimately, once every 7 years. Others say twice every 7 years. It makes sense to say that really it's once every 7 years. So I will say this is my name forever, but it's written la'alem ksiv. La'alem means to remain hidden. Rava wanted to teach about the 4-letter name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, ultimately again in shiur. Amalehu Saba la'alem ksiv. It only says la'alem. Means the name is supposed to be hidden. You don't teach about it in a public setting. Rabbi Avinu Rami Ksiv Zeshmi Uksiv Zechri. The pasuk says, "This is my name," and it says, "This is my remembrance." What does this mean? Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Lo kishani nechtav ani nekra. It's not the way my name is written that I am read. Nichtav ani biyud hey. I am written as Yud Hey and then Vav and Hey. V'nikra ba'alif dalid. So Rabbi says, so remember again, the name is written as Yud Hey Vav Hey, but it's pronounced as Aleph Dalid Nun Yud. Tarabanan. Berishona Shem ben Shteimesrei Osios Hayimosun Osa L'chol Adam. What says this? Remember, there is also a 12-letter name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we'll say we no longer have this name. We don't have the Masorah for this name. There was a 12-letter name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and in the beginning, right? Bless you. If whoever wanted it, they would convey it to him. If he wanted to use that name, they would give it to you. Misharabu ha-prisim. But I will say when the prisim. Remember, prisim are just people. Prisim could be immoral people. Prisim could just be people like a paritz means someone who breaches things. People who don't know limitations. People who don't operate with boundaries. Mishrabu aprisim hayumosim oso litznuim shebekuna. So they would only give it over to the most modest of the kohanim. Listen to this. Vatznuim shebekuna mavlim oso b'neimas achehem hakohanim. He will say this is so beautiful. So what would happen? So you would only have certain very modest kohanim who would go ahead and have this name. And by duchening, I will say, as the kohanim were singing, the kohanim who knew the 12-letter name would say the 12-letter name softly, as the other kohanim were saying the other name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Incredible. So beautiful. Tanya, Rabbi Tarfon, Pam Achas Alisi, Achar Achi Imi Leduchen. Rabbi Tarfon said, one time I followed my uncle up to Duchen. Rabbi Tarfon was a Kohen also, obviously. He's following his maternal, but he happens to be, he was a Kohen apparently both on his father's side and on his mother's side. So he said, one time I followed up my maternal uncle to Duchen. Rabbi said the Duchen is the platform from which they would give the bracha. V'tisi azni etzel Kohen Gadol, and I bent my ear a little bit towards the Kohen Gadol. V'shamati shevliya shem b'neimas echav hakohanim. And I heard that he said the 12-letter name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu as the other kohanim were singing. So beautiful. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav, Shem ben Arba'im Ushtaim Osios. There is another 42-letter name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Incredible. So in motion also, El Mishet Sanua, Va'anav, Va'omin V'chotzi Yamav, Ve'eno Koes, Ve'eno Mishtaker, Ve'eno Mamid Amidosav. Okay, so we'll say, who gets the 42-letter name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Listen to this. Only someone who is modest, humble, has reached at least the age, right, has got at least reached the halfway point of life. I guess that's 60. Doesn't get angry, never drinks too much, and is always willing to yield, right? So Ma'avri Amidos also means he doesn't bear a grudge, and ultimately when someone wrongs him, he easily forgives, right? He easily forgives, which means no one has this name, right? But again, this incredible. I'll say just to understand. Well, okay. So I'll say whoever ultimately again knows this name and is careful with it and keeps it in a state of purity, ahov lamala is beloved above, v'nechmad lamata, and ultimately is beloved below, right? Ve'emas mutalas alabrios, people respect him. V'nocho shnei olamim ha'olam hazeh ha'olam haba, and he inherits two worlds, this world and the world to come. So I just want to point out something dramatically amazing. If you look at this Gemara, it's telling you the qualities necessary to achieve the highest level of connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Remember, the Gemara is phrased as, if you possess these qualities, we give you the 42-letter name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is another way of saying, if you possess these qualities, you will be zocha to have incredible closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Rabbi say, what are the qualities? Sanua, modesty, anav, humility. You have a certain level of life experience. You don't get angry. You don't drink too much. And Rabbi say, you are a person who is mevater. You are a yielding, forgiving person. Rabbi say, isn't this incredible? These are the qualities necessary to reach the highest levels in relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Abbas, you know what's overwhelmingly amazing about this? It doesn't talk about how much Torah you learn, and it doesn't talk about how much tzedakah you give. Abbas say these are personalistic qualities. Personalistic qualities, again, a sense of modesty. Abbas say modesty is not just in how you dress. Modesty is how a person conducts themselves, a sense of humility, life experience. I don't get angry. I don't drink too much. And I will say the last one, which is probably the hardest one, I'm a vater. People wrong me, I don't bear a grudge. People wrong me, I move on. Right? I don't always walk around life holding everyone to always the highest end. I'm a vater. I know how to yield towards the other. If you possess these qualities, then if I possess these qualities, then I could go ahead and receive the 42 letter name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Both say, this is the recipe. This is the recipe, ultimately, again, for greatness in connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. Amr Shmuel Mishmei Saba. Bavel becheskes kashrus omedes. Ad sheyivad lecha b'man nifsala. So both say, in general, a Jew who comes from Bavel has an automatic cheskes kashrus, unless, of course, you know others. This goes back to what we saw before, that Bavel had the highest genealogical rating. So if you came from Bavel, you have an automatic assumption of genealogical fitness, unless you know otherwise. Interesting, if you come from any other land, you have a presumed genealogical impurity until you go ahead and prove your genealogical intactness. Eretz Yisroel muchsak lifsal. Right, I'm sorry. Eretz Yisroel muchsak lifsal or muchsak lepasal, pasal. Muchsak lekasher, kasher. Eretz Yisroel, it goes after your chazaka. If you have a chazaka that you're a psul, then you're a psul. You have a chazaka that you're kasher. So what's not good for kasher? It doesn't make sense. Amrit muchsak lifsal pasal hastam kasher. In Eretz Yisroel, it said if you have a chazaka that you're pasal, then you're pasal. Which makes it sound like if you don't have a chazaka that you're pasal, then what? You're kasher. And then it said v'hadir tani muchsak lekasher kasher hastam pasal. Then it says if you have a chazaka that you're kasher, which sounds like stam. If you don't have a chazaka, you're pasal. So which one is it? Amrav Huna bar Tachlif Mishei Derav. Lo kasher is not a contradiction. I'll say I'm a base. Kan lahasil isha. Both say, here's what it depends on. It's actually fascinating. In Eretz Yisroel, both say, here's the difference. If you're coming to get married, then ultimately, again, you have to have a chazaka. Ultimately, again, therefore, if you don't have a chazaka, it requires investigation. Right? So in Eretz Yisroel, if you're coming to get married, if you have a chazaka that you're pasal, you're pasal. You have a chazaka that you're kasher. If you don't have a chazaka in Eretz Yisroel, it requires investigation. However, if you're already married, then if you have a chazaka, if you don't have a chazaka, right? You don't have a chazaka apostle, you don't have a chazaka of kasher, you're just stam, then ultimately again we let it be. So Rabbi say, really incredible things. So therefore Rabbi say, based on this last Gemara, if you come from Bavel, you have an assumed cheskas kashrus. You come from all the other lands, an assumed cheskas pasal. You come from Eretz Yisroel, we look at what your chazaka is. Cheskas kashrus, you're kasher. Cheskas pasal, you're pasal. Stam, what if you have no chazaka? Then it depends. What does it depend on? If you're looking to get married, so then you have to, we need genealogical investigation. If you're already married, then we leave it alone. We'll also listen to this Gemara. I'm Rabbi Yosef. Whoever speaks like a Babylonian, we allow him to get married. Now, we'll say, if apparently Babylonians spoke in a distinct way, so if you speak like a person from Bavel, so it's clear you're from Bavel, then again, if you're from Bavel, Bavel means you're genealogically fit, just based on your Babylonian accents, right? That is enough to go ahead and allow you to get married without any investigation about it. You know what happened? People caught on to this and suddenly started faking Babylonian accents. So now that people are faking Babylonian accent is no longer enough. Zeiri, so this is a great story. Zeiri hava kamishtamit minei Rabbi Yochanan. Zeiri was avoiding Rabbi Yochanan. Why? The hava amerle nosiv barti. Now watch this. Zeiri was from Babel. Rabbi Yochanan was from Eretz Yisroel. Rabbi Yochanan from Eretz Yisroel wanted Zeiri, his Talmud, to marry his daughter. Zeiri didn't want to marry Rabbi Yochanan's daughter. Why not? Because he didn't want to marry a girl from Eretz Yisroel. Right? Because again, Eretz Yisroel has a lower genealogical rating than Bavel. So therefore he was avoiding his Rebbe. Okay? So the Gemara says, Yom Echad Hava Kazli Baruch. One day, Zeiri was actually walking with Rabbi Yochanan, and what happens? Matu Lu'orkima Demaya. They came to a body of water, like a big puddle. So what happened? Arkivei Rabbi Yochanan Kasi. That's beautiful. So the Talmud Zeiri put his Rabbi Yochanan on his shoulders so that his Rebbe wouldn't have to walk through the puddle. He carried him over the puddle. The Kama Amarle, so Rabbi Yochanan said, Oraisam Kshera, Bansin Lo Ksheran. So Zeiri, apparently the Torah of Eretz Yisroel is kosher enough for you, right? Because I'm your Rebbe. But our daughters are not kosher enough for you. Give him a little bit of Musa. So my daitech, so we'll say, so Zeiri, what was the problem? Ilema medisnan asari yuchsin. So Rabbi Yochanan says to Zeiri, why are you hesitant to marry my daughter? What is your concern? Ilema medisnan asari yuchsin alumi badal. So we'll say, okay, so maybe you're going to quote the Mishnah. What's your problem? Your problem is that ultimately, again, they took the genealogically impure people to Bavel. So your concern is that maybe my family, Rabbi Yochanan's family, is not genealogically fit. Here's the problem. The pasuk also says that Ezra took the crown of Levi Yisraelim. Did Ezra take everyone? No, he didn't take everyone. So the Gemara says, the same way that Ezra didn't take all the crown of Levi Yisraelim, he also didn't take all the genealogically impure people either. In other words, don't think that Babel is so genealogically pure. The problem is Rabbi Yochanan forgot, Ishtamite hadam Rabbi Lazar lo Allah Ezra mi Babel ad sha'asa kisolas nekiya ba'Allah. It's not true. I'll say, whereas Ezra did not take all the Karmel Leviim, you're right, but Ezra did take all the genealogically impure people. In other words, he made Bavel like fine flour. In other words, that in Achinami, Bavel was genealogically fit. So we'll say, it's also interesting also how so Rabbi Yochanan forgot about this detail. Why? I will say, it's an incredible yesod that when do we lose objectivity in life? When do we lose objectivity? When it comes to our own family. When it comes to our own family. It's just like the person who tries to tell you that your kid is not doing the right thing. My child, right? So again, when it comes to our own family, often we lose a sense of objectivity. Again, understandably so. Good. So we'll say, never again. The Gemara doesn't tell us the end of the story, but the Pashtus, Zeiri did not marry Rabbi Yochanan's daughter. So the Gemara goes weiter. Ula went to Pumbedisa, Lebei Rabbi Yehuda. Good. Chazia the Rabbi Yitzchak Baruch Rabbi Yehuda, the god of Yonason. Listen to this. We'll say, so Ula went to Pumbedisa, to the house of Rabbi Yehuda. He saw Rabbi Yehuda had a son, Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak, the god of Yonason, who was already older and did not marry. So Rabbi Yehuda has an older son, Rabbi Yitzchak. So the Gemara says, Amarle, my time lo comes of Mar. Amarle, my time lo comes of Mar. Is this a lebrei? So Ula says to Rabbi Yehuda, I don't understand. Why have you not married off your son? So listen to this. Amarle, mi yedana mehecha. So mi yedana mehecha insiv. So Rabbi Yehuda says, here's the problem. How could I ever know that the girl I married my son off to is genealogically pure? So Rabbi Yehuda felt like a little bit paralyzed in the ability to marry off his son out of a concern that maybe I won't find someone who's really genealogically fit. So I'll say, this is great. So Ula says to Rabbi Yehuda, Amarle, Atu anan miyadina mehecha kasinan. Tell me, Rabbi Yehuda, how do you know that we are genealogically pure? Right? In other words, how do you know who we come from? Dilma, mehanach tichsev nashim bitzion inu, besulas bar Yehuda. So I will say a heartbreaking pasuk in Eicha, talking about again when they came to destroy Yerushalayim, they violated the women. So I will say, Ula says Rabbi Yehuda, maybe we're the products of those women. In other words, Rabbi say, in general, if a woman is chas v'shalom violated and then becomes pregnant, we still assume that the baby belongs to the child. We'll say it's the same way we spoke about this before. In general, right? How does anyone know that their father is their father? Right? What do we say? Because even if a woman committed adultery, rov bi'ilos achar abal. Right? The majority of relations she has with her husband. Right? That's the chazaka we have. So Ula says to Rabbi Yehuda, how do you know that the Alter Babas weren't those women, Rahman al-Islam, who were violated when Eretz Yisroel was destroyed? Okay, maybe that's who we descend from. Maybe you'll say, okay, even if so, the offspring of a Jewish woman and a non-Jewish man is still kosher. So I will say this is actually an incredible pasuk. So in Amos, the Navi is giving them musar for their decadent, immoral behavior. And what does the Navi say? The Navi blasts the people who sleep on beds of ivory, usruchim al arisosam, and they defile their beds. What are we talking about? Who are these people? Who are these people who defile their beds? Elu b'nei Adam hamashtinim b'mayim b'fnei mitosem arumim. This refers to people who urinate unclothed in front of their beds. The Gemara says, 1 second. Ata, first white line. Last short line. Umagati Rabbi Avo. Ihachi, Hainu Dichsiv, Lachin Ata Yiglu Barosha Golem. So therefore the pasuk says these are the people who will be exiled first. So Rabbi Avo says, I don't understand. The people who urinate in front of their bed, those are the people who are exiled first. In other words, even if you want to say urinating in front of your bed unclothed is a lack of tznius, lack of modesty, those are the people who are going to be first exiled. Not good. I understand, not good. But Lamai said that's like the cardinal sin. No. This is what it means to say. I will say when it means that they defile their beds, they're not defiling. Rabbi Avo, Elu b'nei Adam she'ochlin v'shosim zem. It refers to people who eat and drink together. Umadbikim mitoseim zu b'zu, and then they push their couches next to each other. Umachlifin nishoseim ze im ze. And they trade wives with one another. So I would say this is the Navi blasting the people for engaging in this type of immoral behavior. Umasrichim arusosam b'shichvas zera she'enom shalahem. And they defile their couches with semen that doesn't belong to them. So again, what's the point over here? The point that Ula is making, ultimately against Rabbi Yehuda, is the Navi is blasting the people for engaging in immoral behavior. So he's saying, how do you know we don't descend from those people? In other words, I don't know. Maybe that's us. So Ula is saying to Rabbi Yehuda, you are on this quest, like for the perfect genealogically fit girl, right? And you're presupposing that you're genealogically fit. But how do you know? At the end of the day, none of us know who it is that we truly descend from. Amar lehechi. So what should we do? What should I do? Amrlei, Wolff said this is incredible. So I just want to point out, even before we go on, Wolff said this is an incredible Musar just in general also for the way we conduct ourselves in Shidduchim, right? So there are many issues in the current Shidduch world, but one of them I will say is, again, we've definitely become elitist in many ways, in the quest of looking for the perfect person. Sometimes I will say again, in that quest for elitism, in that quest for perfection, it's good to look a little bit inward, right? Before we start puzzling, I can't do this one, and I can't do this one. I say that's elitist. That's elitist, right? The moment you begin to disqualify certain people, certain types, certain places, certain this, that's gaiva, and it's elitism. So before you become such a bal gaiva, such an elitist, look inward. And be careful once you look inward, because again, do enough investigation, and it could be that we descend from some of these other people also. Nothing's more humbling than to know that you're not as perfect as you think you are. So once you know you're not as perfect as you think you are, never chas v'shalom project that sense of elitism. Never chas v'shalom be a bal gaiva when it comes to dealing with others as well. Incredible yisod in life in general, certainly in shidduchim. Amar lehechi novin. So he says, so what should I do? Amarlei, the Wolff says incredible. Zil basar shtikusa. The Wolff say, look for silence. What does this mean? Ki hai debatki b'nei marava. So Wolff says, listen to this. In Eretz Yisroel, ki mansu beitrei bahadadi. When two people fight with each other, Wolff say, chazu hei minayu dekadim v'shasik. See, Wolff say, when two people fight, see which one is willing to stop fighting first. Which one is quiet first? Amri, hai miyuchas tvei. And no, that one has greater yichus. So we'll say, wow, listen to this. Do you want to see how one person, do you want to see yichus? I will say, you know how you can see yichus? Bashtukusa. Who is the person who's willing to either avoid fighting, right? Or when they are in a fight, is the one who de-escalates ultimately again and is willing to make shalom, is willing to be silent. So I will say, that is indicative of yichus. I will say, isn't that incredible? So I will say, so there's two ways to look at this. Number one way to look at this is, it could be that when a person has that midah of shalom, the person has that midah of de-escalation, the person has that midah of humility, that they're willing either A, not to fight, or de-escalate, that shows they have yichus. Or I will say, that here's the other possibility. Maybe it has nothing to do with yichus at all. Maybe it has nothing to do with who your parents or who your grandparents or great-grandparents are, but rather it's talking about your yichus. Rabbi say, yichus isn't always historical yichus. There's also personalistic yichus. That will say you could tell a lot about a person by how they act in confrontational situations, right? So I'll say, you ever see this? People who just go nuts, right? When they're in a confrontational situation, they fight. The gloves come off and they go from 0 to 60, from nice to nasty, and wow. And I will say, that is very telling about a person. Very telling. In general, the Gemara says, stay away from that kind of person. Stay away from that kind of person. That is bad yichus. Either bad familial yichus or just bad personalistic yichus. Stay away from a person who goes from nice to nasty in no time at all. But a person who is able to maintain shalom, a person, even when they get into an argument, is able ultimately again to say, you know what, this is not worth the fight. Or the person who's willing to de-escalate, even while the other person is going at it, the Gemara says, that's yichus. You see someone like that, that's the kind of mishpacha you want to marry into. That's the kind of person you want to be close to. We'll say, what an incredible yesod. Sometimes the thing that speaks most about who you are as a person is not who you come from, but it's how you conduct yourself in volatile, difficult situations. It is easy to go off the rails. It's easy to go nuts. It's easy to go ballistic. It's easy to go from nice to nasty in no time. And that says a lot about who you are as a person. But if you're able to maintain your composure, even under difficult situations, able to maintain your midos, able to be a piece of shalom, able to de-escalate, ultimately, again, the ein yichus gedolah mizah. I'll also stop over here for today. We're going to continue with the sugi tomorrow. Shkoyach.